to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, where you can let the day soften at the edges and drift into rest. Tonight, you'll be carried to a cozy bridge arched over Rainwater, a gentle place of lantern glow and quiet wonder where the world hushes itself into peace. Take a slow breath in through your nose, as if you're sipping warm air from a cup held close to your face. Let it fill you without effort. Then breathe out unhurried, as if you're fogging a window and watching the blur fade away. Feel the place beneath you, perhaps a bed, perhaps a couch, supporting you. Notice how the weight of your shoulders can sink down, how your jaw can loosen, how the small muscles around your eyes can smooth. Another breath in, another breath out. You don't need to chase sleep. You don't need to solve anything. You only need to arrive in this moment and let the story carry you the rest of the way. Imagine the world around you dimming, as if a lamp has been turned low in a room filled with soft fabrics. Imagine a gentle sound beyond the walls. Rain, maybe, or the memory of rain. Steady and kind, like a quiet friend who stays nearby without asking for anything. And now, in your mind's eye, picture a path that begins just a few steps away. It doesn't demand attention, it simply waits. The path is made of dark, smooth stones, warmed by the day and cooling now under evening air. The stones glisten as though they've been kissed by recent rain. Along the edges, small plants gather, ferns with curled tips, moss thick as velvet, and pale flowers shaped like little bells that hold the last droplets of water. You can take this path without effort. Your feet know how to move gently. The air is cool, but not cold. Cool like a clean sheet turned down in a quiet room. As you walk, the sound of water becomes clearer, not rushing, not roaring, but speaking softly in a language older than words. Somewhere ahead, a bridge waits, and the rainwater beneath it flows in a silver ribbon through the shadowed earth. You can feel your breathing matching the pace of your steps, and you can let the rest of the day fall away behind you, like a cloak sliding from your shoulders. There is nothing to carry forward except curiosity. And even that can be light, floating like a feather. The path turns once gently, as if it's guiding you by the elbow. And there, through a curtain of willow branches, appears the bridge. It's small, cozy, and somehow welcoming, as if it has been expecting you all along. And now, as the story begins to unfold, the focus can shift, and you can rest more deeply, letting the scene move on its own. In a valley where rain was treated like a blessing and the clouds were considered wise, there stood a bridge unlike any other. It arched over a narrow stream that collected rainwater from the hills, gathering it in quiet pools and sending it onward with patient grace. The locals did not call it famous, though travelers sometimes did. The locals simply called it the Cozy Bridge, as if that were all anyone needed to know. The bridge was built of stone and timber, but it did not feel heavy. It felt held together by gentleness. Its stones were rounded like river stones, softened by time, fitted together so neatly that moss had found little reason to wedge between them. The timber beams were dark and smooth, polished by countless damp evenings and the brushing of sleeves as people passed. Along its sides ran rails carved with simple spirals and leaf patterns, worn faintly by hands that had rested there to watch the water below. Over the bridge, a shallow roof extended. Not enough to block the sky, but enough to make passing beneath it feel like entering a small, safe room. The roof was shingled in overlapping slats that caught raindrops and turned them into quiet music. And hanging from the beams were lanterns, round-bellied lanterns made of paper treated with wax, glowing with a soft, honeyed light. They were lit each evening by someone unseen, and they stayed lit long enough that the night never felt too sharp. Rainwater flowed beneath, always present in one form or another. When the weather was dry, the stream still held the memory of rain, fed by hidden springs and shaded by stones that kept the cool. When the rain came, it arrived without violence, as if the clouds were simply pouring out their hearts. The water rose a little, then settled again, carrying leaves and petals gently past the bridge, as though showing them the way home. Not far from this bridge, there was a small village tucked into the curve of the valley. Its houses were built low and warm, roofs thatched or shingled, windows glowing like fireflies at dusk. The village had gardens instead of fences, and pathways that wandered rather than marched. People here spoke softly, even when they laughed, as if they didn't want to startle the air. On many evenings, a person might wander to the bridge with a mug of tea or a shawl wrapped around their shoulders. They might pause at the center of the arch, where the stream sounded most soothing, and look down at the rainwater shining under lantern light. Some said the bridge had a way of easing thoughts, of taking worries and turning them into something smooth and harmless, like stones tumbled in water. Among the villagers there lived a quiet caretaker named Elowen. She had hair the color of toasted chestnuts and eyes like damp earth, deep, calm, and kind. She did not call herself anything grand. She did not seek notice, but those who knew the bridge well knew Elowen as its gentle companion. As the air turned cool and the first stars appeared, Elowen found herself drawn to the forest paths. She gathered fallen leaves and twigs, weaving them into a makeshift shelter. The air was crisp, and the stars twinkled above, a reminder of the beauty that surrounded her. As the air turned cool and the first stars appeared like pinpricks in velvet, she would walk to the bridge with a small lantern of her own. Her lantern was different from the ones hanging above. It was made of glass with tiny bubbles trapped inside, like captured moments of breath. When it glowed, it looked like moonlight softened by water, Elowen would carry it carefully, not because it was fragile, but because she liked the way the light moved when she walked, gentle and swaying like a lullaby. At the bridge, she would pause and listen. The stream beneath the arch did not speak in words, but it did have a voice. It murmured over stones, it sighed against roots, it whispered into reeds. In times when the village felt busy, when minds were loud with plans and lists and unspoken concerns, Elowen would stand on the bridge and let the sound rinse her thoughts clean. She believed, as many did, that rainwater held a kind of quiet wisdom, and that listening to it could bring the heart back into harmony. On this particular evening, the sky was a soft gray that leaned toward lavender. Rain had fallen earlier, and everything in the valley glistened. Leaves slick and shining, stones dark with damp, spiderwebs jeweled with droplets. The air smelled of wet bark and clean soil, and somewhere, far off, a bird gave a final sleepy call before tucking its head beneath its wing. Elowen approached the bridge as she always did, but she felt something different in the air, something like a hush within the hush. The lanterns were already glowing, though she had not lit them yet. They shone steadily, as if they had decided to begin the evening early. She stepped onto the first stone of the bridge. The stone was cool underfoot and faintly textured, as if it remembered every rainy night it had ever held. The roof overhead gathered the last dripping sounds from the trees and turned them into a soft, scattered tapping. When Elowen reached the center, she rested her hands on the rail and looked down. The rainwater below did not rush. It moved with a steady patience, and in its surface, reflections wandered slowly. Lantern light, the pale shapes of leaves, the soft curve of the bridge's underside. But tonight, something else shimmered there, faint and fleeting, a thread of brightness that seemed to glide beneath the surface like a ribbon of starlight slipping through shadow. Elowen blinked, and the brightness was gone. She might have dismissed it as a trick of reflection, but the air felt expectant, as if waiting for her to notice. She leaned slightly farther over the rail, careful not to let her lantern tip. There it was again. A soft glow moved under the surface, slow, unhurried, and gentle as a breath. It drifted around a stone, then disappeared beneath a small overhang where the water deepened. Elowen's chest loosened, as if the sight had untied a knot she hadn't realized she was holding. She listened more closely. Under the familiar murmur of water, there was another sound, almost too quiet to catch. It wasn't a voice, not exactly, but it was a feeling that arrived like a thought, drifting into the mind without effort. A simple invitation. Come a little closer, just listen. Elowen did not feel afraid. The bridge had never frightened her, and the rainwater had always been kind. Still, she respected mysteries. She believed they should be approached the way one approaches a sleeping cat, slowly, softly, with gentle hands, and no sudden moves. She took her lantern and set it on the rail where its light fell in a small, steady pool. Then she knelt on the stone floor of the bridge and looked through the spaces between the rail carvings. Below, the rainwater seemed deeper than usual. Not higher, just deeper, as if the stream had decided to contain more than it had before. And within that depth, the glow returned, drifting upward as though curious. It hovered just below the surface, and Elowen realized it was not a ribbon at all. It was something small and living, moving with its own quiet will. A water moat, she thought. In old valley tales, water moats were tiny spirits of rainwater born when the first drops of a season touched a place that was loved. They weren't grand like storms, and they weren't loud like rivers. They were gentle, almost shy, and they glowed faintly, like the memory of a candle flame. Elowen had never seen one, not with her waking eyes. The water moat rose until it touched the underside of the surface, making the smallest ripple. The ripple caught lantern light and turned it into rings of gold. Then, as if gathering courage, the moat slipped through the surface and floated into the air. It hovered just beneath the bridge near the arch's underside, where moss grew in soft cushions. The moat was no bigger than a plum, more like a bead of light than a creature, but it held a presence, gentle and calm, like a tiny heart beating slowly. Elowen watched in silence. The moat drifted closer to her, rising into the bridge's sheltered space. Its light was cool and soft, the color of moonlight filtered through rain. It floated near Elowen's face, and she felt, rather than heard, a whisper of feeling, like the coolness of rain on warm skin, like the relief of a deep breath after a long day. Elowen's shoulders relaxed. She did not reach out. Instead, she simply stayed. She offered stillness the way one offers an open door. The moat drifted past her lantern, and for a moment the two lights mingled, honey and moon, warmth and coolness. The lantern flames did not flicker, the moat did not dim. They simply shared the air. Then the moat moved toward the center of the bridge, hovering above the stones as if inspecting them. Its glow brushed the carved spirals on the rails, and the patterns seemed to soften, as though remembering being freshly carved long ago. The bridge, in its quiet way, seemed to respond, settling, humming faintly in the bones of wood and stone. Elowen's mind filled with images, being hung for the first time, their light being hung for the first time, their light trembling with newborn brightness. She saw people crossing the bridge during storms, their faces tired, then easing as they entered the bridge's cozy shelter. The bridge had always been a place of passage, but it had also been a place of pause, a small sanctuary, a roof in the rain, a gentle arch over water that remembered the sky. Elowen understood, as if the moat were showing her that the bridge had gathered comfort the way a quilt gathers warmth, thread by thread, night by night. And now, after so many seasons of listening and sheltering and glowing softly in the dark, The bridge had begun to create something new, a quiet kind of magic, simple and unforced. The moat drifted toward the edge of the bridge where a few raindrops still clung to the roof shingles. It hovered under one drop in particular, as if studying it. The drop trembled, then fell, landing on the moat's surface without splashing. The moat absorbed it, and its glow grew slightly brighter. Elowen smiled without thinking. She sat back on her heels, feeling the cool stone beneath her, feeling the softness of the air. Somewhere beyond the bridge, the village lights twinkled through wet leaves. The world felt hushed and held. A gentle idea rose in Elowen, not as a plan, but as something that wanted to happen. If the bridge could make comfort, perhaps comfort could be shared. The village was full of small tirednesses, work-worn hands, minds that carried too many thoughts, hearts that sometimes forgot how to rest. People came to the bridge already, but perhaps tonight there was a new way to offer ease, something as gentle as rain. Elowen stood and took her lantern from the rail. The moat hovered near her shoulder, drifting along as though curious about her movements. She walked slowly to the end of the bridge, closest to the village. Her steps made soft sounds on the stones, muted by damp air. When she reached the last stone, she turned back to look at the bridge as a whole. Lanterns glowed under the roof. Moss clung in quiet patches beneath the arch. Rainwater murmured below like a lullaby sung low, and above, the sky, still clouded, held a pale seam of moonlight struggling through, as if the moon were peeking from behind a curtain. Elowen did not need to call anyone. She didn't need to ring a bell. She simply walked, and the moat followed, and the world itself seemed to lean in and listen. In the village, there was a baker named Rowan who always woke before dawn to knead dough while most people still slept. There was a potter named Sarah who spent her days with clay beneath her nails, and a warm kiln breathing like a sleeping animal. There was an elder named Tomlin who tended a small orchard and sometimes forgot where he left his spectacles, then laughed gently at himself when he found them on his head. These people and many others lived in the valley's rhythm, moving through their days like a slow stream, sometimes smooth, sometimes snagged on worries. They were not unhappy, but they were human, and humans grew tired. As Elowen walked past windows glowing with lamplight, she felt the moat's presence near her, a calm pulse of cool light. It reminded her of the moment after rain stops, when the world feels freshly washed and quiet. She paused in the village square, where a stone fountain sat empty of water, its basin filled only with fallen leaves and a few rain puddles. She lifted her lantern and held it a little higher, letting its light spill across the damp stones. The moat drifted upward, hovering above the fountain basin. For a moment it shone brighter, as if the open space gave it room to breathe. If sleep had tried to claim him, but he had had flour still on his hands, and his hair was tousled, as if sleep had tried to claim him, but he had not fully surrendered. He looked around, puzzled, then noticed Elowen's lantern, and the faint glow above the fountain. He blinked slowly. "Evening," he said, voice quiet. Elowen smiled. "Evening." Rowan stepped closer, his gaze fixed on the moat. "Is that a water moat?" Elowen murmured, as if speaking too loudly might startle it away. Rowan's shoulders eased. He didn't seem startled. If anything, he looked relieved, as though seeing the moat reminded him of something he had known as a child and forgotten. Soon, Sarah the potter emerged from her workshop, wiping her hands on an apron. Tomlin the orchard keeper stepped out slowly, leaning on his cane, his eyes bright with curiosity. One by one, villagers appeared, drawn not by noise but by a feeling in the air, an invitation as gentle as the scent of rain. They gathered in a loose circle around the fountain, leaving space, as if instinctively understanding that comfort needs room to spread. The moat drifted above them, its light cool and soothing. It made no sound, but it seemed to bring the sound of rain with it, the memory of it, the sense of it, like a quiet melody beneath everything else. Elowen spoke softly. "The bridge has been listening to the rainwater for a long time. Tonight it seems the rainwater decided to listen back." The villagers smiled, not in disbelief, but in recognition. This valley held mysteries the way the forest held ferns, naturally, without fuss. Rowan lifted his hands, palms up, as if warming them over a fire. "It feels calming," he said, "like when dough rises under a cloth and you know you don't have to touch it for a while." Sarah nodded. "Like clay resting before it's shaped?" Tomlin chuckled softly. "Like apples hanging on branches, taking their time." The moat drifted lower, hovering at chest height. Its light brushed their faces and their expressions softened, eyes growing heavy and peaceful. The village square seemed to dim around the moat's glow, as if the night itself were turning down its brightness to let this small magic stand out. Elowen did not instruct them to do anything. She didn't need to. The villagers simply stood, breathing slowly, letting the moat's presence wash over them. And then, as if guided by an unseen current, the moat began to drift toward the bridge. Elowen followed, and the villagers followed too, not in a hurry, but in a slow procession, like a lullaby unfolding. They walked along the damp path that led back to the willow curtain in the bridge's gentle arch. The air grew cooler as they left the village lights behind, but the lanterns on the bridge glowed steadily, welcoming them. As they reached the bridge, the rainwater's sound rose to meet them, soft and constant. The bridge roof sheltered them from the last drifting droplets falling from leaves. The lantern light wrapped around them like a warm scarf. The moat floated to the center of the bridge and hovered there, above the stones, as if claiming the spot where the bridge's comfort was strongest. The villagers gathered around, leaning on rails, standing shoulder to shoulder, with gentle space between, listening to water below and watching light above. For a while, no one spoke. Words felt unnecessary here. The bridge did not demand conversation. It offered presence. It offered pause. It offered the simple truth that it was safe in this moment to stop and breathe. The rainwater below carried tiny leaves under the arch, turning them slowly in eddies, then releasing them onward. The lanterns above made soft halos in the damp air. The moat's glow pulsed faintly like a slow heartbeat. Rowan exhaled and let his head rest lightly against the carved rail. Sarah's hands unclenched, fingers uncurling as if releasing invisible tools. Tomlin closed his eyes, and his face looked younger in the gentle light, as if worries were lines drawn in sand and the tide had come in. Elowen stood among them, feeling the bridge beneath her feet like a steady friend. She watched the moat drift in small circles, never leaving the bridge's center, as if it were weaving a blanket of calm over the gathered people. Time stretched, soft and wide. It might have been minutes. It might have been longer. In that space, time did not matter. Only the slow rhythm of breathing mattered. Only the water's hush mattered. Only the feeling of being held by something quiet and kind. Eventually, one by one, villagers began to drift away. Not abruptly, but as if carried on gentle currents. Rowan offered Elowen a sleepy smile and whispered, "Thank you," before turning back toward his bakery, his steps lighter. Sarah touched the rail with her fingertips, as if thanking the bridge itself, then wandered toward her workshop with a calmness that seemed to settle into her bones. Tomlin lingered longest, gazing down at the rainwater as if it were an old friend. Then he sighed contentedly and shuffled back toward his cottage, his cane tapping softly on stones. Elowen remained. The moat remained too, hovering above the bridge's stones like a small moon caught under a roof. When the last villager was gone, the valley felt even quieter, as if the bridge had absorbed all their tiredness and let it dissolve into the water below. Elowen sat on the bridge floor with her back against one rail, her lantern beside her. She watched the moat, and the moat watched her, or perhaps simply existed in the same peaceful space. Beyond the bridge, the willows moved slightly in a breeze, their wet leaves brushing each other like whispers. The sky above shifted from lavender gray to deeper indigo, and a few stars appeared, shyly at first, then more confidently as clouds thinned. The rainwater continued its endless journey, gathering, flowing, reflecting, carrying. Elowen's thoughts grew softer like wool teased into fluff. She thought of the bridge's stones, each one placed carefully long ago. She thought of the hands that built it, probably tired, probably hopeful. She thought of the bridge's roof, created not to block the world, but to make a small shelter inside it. She thought of lanterns lit each evening, not because it was necessary, but because light is a form of kindness. And she thought of the moat, born from Rainwater's memory, and the bridge's patient listening. It drifted slightly closer. Elowen extended a hand, palm up, not reaching, simply offering. The moat hovered above her palm, not touching, but close enough that she felt a coolness, like mist. She imagined that if she closed her fingers, she might trap it, but the thought felt wrong. This was not something to hold. This was something to share. So she stayed still, breathing slowly, letting the moat hover in its own freedom. After a while, the moat drifted away from her hand and floated to the edge of the bridge, peering down at the rainwater below. It paused there, as if listening. Then it lowered itself slowly toward the stream. It touched the surface, and the water accepted it without splash, without disturbance, as if welcoming it home. The moat sank beneath the surface and became a thread of glow again, slipping through the stream's dark ribbon. Elowen watched until the glow disappeared beneath stones. The bridge felt the same, yet subtly different, like a room after a lullaby has been sung, still holding the sweetness of the melody, even after it ends. Elowen picked up her lantern and stood, stretching slowly, feeling the cool air on her cheeks. She looked down at the rainwater one last time and whispered, not a command, but a gentle gratitude. Then she walked back across the bridge, her lantern swinging softly at her side. The lanterns overhead continued to glow, their honeyed light steady, their warmth gentle. The bridge roof gathered the last drips of water and turned them into quiet music. Behind her, the stream flowed on. Ahead, the village waited in its cozy sleepiness. Elowen returned home, her cottage small and warm beneath a tree that always smelled faintly of rain. Inside, she set her lantern on a table, and the glass bubbles caught the light and made tiny moons on the walls. She washed her hands slowly, listening to water in the basin, thinking how every kind of water had its own song. She climbed into bed with a simple sigh, letting her body settle into softness. Outside, the valley continued its quiet breathing. The bridge stood patient and kind, arching over rainwater that remembered the sky. And somewhere beneath the surface, perhaps, the moat drifted through the stream's depths, gathering calm the way the bridge gathered comfort, carrying it onward to wherever it was needed. The night deepens now, and everything slows. The bridge is quiet, the lanterns glow softly, the rainwater murmurs and murmurs, steady and soothing, like a voice that never hurries. The valley holds itself in gentle stillness, wrapped in damp leaves and moonlit air. Breaths grow slower, thoughts grow lighter. If any last worries remain, they can float downstream, slipping under the cozy arch, carried away without effort. The bridge does not ask you to fix them. The rainwater does not ask you to understand them. They simply pass, like leaves in a calm current. The scene becomes softer at the edges. Lantern light blurs into warmth. Water sound becomes a lullaby, and you can let yourself drift as if you are resting beneath that small roof, safe and sheltered, listening to rainwater speak in a language made of hush and comfort. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.